Jack, do you know the difference between a first and a second? Going above and beyond is always the expectation. That's soldier first class. Remember that. Zack, let's go. Sephiroth is waiting.
Sephiroth? The hero? Wow, I'm gonna meet a hero!
Final Fantasy VII Fever has hit fever pitch again since the beloved RPG first took the industry by storm upon its launch on the PS1. Way back in 1997, the developer has kept on finding ways to keep that world and story alive and kicking. Of course, nothing it's done on that front has ever come close to the scale of what we're seeing now. 2020 saw the launch of Final Fantasy VII Remake, the first installment in a trilogy that will collectively reimagine the classic RPG, while next winter will bring its sequel, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And to make the wait until its launch a little easier, Square Enix has revived, revitalized, and re-released another game that might not be as big in stature as its precursors, but it's beloved in its own right. Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII is a vital part of the self-contained universe, serving as a prequel to Final Fantasy VII and telling a tale that's bound to serve as crucial backstory for Square Enix's ongoing FF7 remake trilogy. Since its launch a decade and a half ago, however, it's been stuck on the PlayStation Portable, the system it originally launched for, until now. Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion brings the portable action RPG to modern platforms, while sprucing it up in several ways, and Square Enix has gone about it in almost the perfect way. It straddles the line between being a remaster and being a remake with great aplomb, making significant upgrades and refinements in a number of key areas while ensuring that in terms of actual content, both on gameplay and story fronts, is virtually unchanged. Square Enix calls it more than a remaster, and it certainly lives up to that billing, though this is still Crisis Core at its, well, core. It's more than just a simple upres. The biggest improvement, and the one that players will notice right off the bat, is the visuals, to no one's surprise. The original Crisis Core launched for incredibly weak hardware, especially by current-day standards, 15 years ago, so it's no surprise that as far as graphics are concerned, it hasn't aged particularly well. With that in mind, the technical leap on display in Reunion is hard not to be impressed with. Square Enix has ported the game over to Unreal Engine 4 for the purpose of this remaster, and everything from the character models and environments has been completely redone and sports much greater levels of detail. While it's obviously not on par with something like Final Fantasy VII Remake, which wouldn't be fair to expect of what is ultimately still a remaster anyway, it does look consistently sharp and detailed. Animations are still a little stiff and look right out of a 2007 game, which they are, but the remaster does an admirable job of overhauling the visuals by and large. It's still a decade and a half old, but rather than looking as it really did back then, it looks like what I remember Crisis Core looked like when I first played it back in the day. Reunion polishes up the production values of the original in other ways as well, from the music, which was already excellent, being improved to voice lines being recorded. In spite of the latter, however, storytelling remains as goofy and borderline laughable as it has always been in this game. Stilted and inane writing and grating voice acting frequently makes for conversations between characters that make absolutely no sense, while protagonist Zack has a boisterous personality that can be a bit much at times, though he does tend to grow on you. Of course, more than a few major plot developments can also be too contrived, though that is fitting for a Final Fantasy VII experience. Of course, Crisis Core's story and the melodramatic manner in which it often chooses to tell it are exactly what endeared the game to no few people when it first launched on the PSP. And if you were in that group, there's a good chance that you'll still find plenty to enjoy here. I most certainly did. Ultimately, it's hard not to be invested in Zack Fair's story and its tragic ending, while the way it all recontextualizes Final Fantasy VII's story adds even more value to it, especially with the remake trilogy currently in full swing. Just know, going in, that Crisis Core story has been brought over as it is in the remaster, and it's one of the aspects of the game that has aged for the worse. Conversely, one area where Reunion is an absolute blast, almost without any reservations, is the combat. which of course was very true for the original Crisis Core as well. Combat functions like an action title with one button being dedicated to your regular attacks and one each to blocks and dodges, both of which function with satisfying smoothness. The fact that the game runs at a crisp 60 FPS obviously helps things, and even at its core, the moment-to-moment action remains enjoyable. Of course, things are spiced up by the introduction of other elements in the mix, such as equipping materia orbs, which in turn gives access to various abilities and magic skills that you can use at any time, as long as you have the MP or AP for it. Another crucial mechanic is the Digital Mind Wave, or the DMW, which is essentially a slot machine that's always rolling on the top left corner of the screen in combat, and grants various buffs and bonuses at random, including having unlimited MP or AP for short windows, having higher stats for a short period, or even being able to call in summons, who all have brand new and gloriously explosive animations to gawk at. The complete randomness of the DMW might put off some players, but personally I love how dynamic and unpredictable it can make battles, and how much it helps to stave off repetition. Don't get me wrong, Crisis Core is still a very straightforward game. This is still a PSP title, and that shows in its design. Combat is much more straightforward than what we get in modern action RPGs, and the level design in particular is bare bones at best, with little to no room for exploration and levels being comprised largely of collections of corridors. Though Reunion deserves a lot of credit for how radically it improves Crisis Core's visuals and the other several quality of life improvements it makes, it's also clear that by design it doesn't make much of an effort to modernize other aspects of the experience as well. Of course, that straightforward and old school nature has an undeniable charm of its own, and even though Reunion doesn't breathe life into Crisis Core the way Final Fantasy VII Remake did into the original FF7, it still does an awful lot more than you'd ordinarily expect from a remaster. As long as you're calibrating your expectations, you're likely to have a blast with Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion. It looks sharp, the combat is a lot of fun, and the story, for all of its issues, has its bright spots, especially if you're invested in the FF7 universe. Sure, crucial aspects of the experience have clearly not aged very well, but there's still more than enough here to attract not only those who have played the original Crisis Core, but also new fans who are looking to dive deeper into the larger FF7 story. Without a doubt, this is the best way to reunite with this underappreciated PSP classic. Hey, did you know that we at Gaming Bolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell, and let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.